Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
There you go. That's the weather there. Now, look, we've got Frank O'Collins online. He's the philosopher, knowledge architect, developer of open model of UCADIA systems of language and information based on historic truth. He's got websites called one-heaven.org, one-evil.org, and ucadia.com. Frank O'Collins, thanks for coming back on Radio Skid Row. Good morning.
Good morning, Jack. How are you?
Good. Now, Frank, look, we had a great response last time you were here on the 21st last year, and one person rang me up and said he felt cleansed.
That worries me.
I know. I didn't know if he was religious or anything. He just goes, he just explained everything. I feel cleansed. So it was a good response.
That's a great response.
Now, Frank, we went through all this. Chard's here. He was away.
How's it going, Frank?
G'day. Good.
Now, we just had a little brief history, what was going on, which I found interesting. The Catholic Church was not founded in Rome. It was founded in Paris, which was interesting. Charles Martel and his sons put in through the Catholic Church and went for a while. And then the next minute, the Saxons came in and destroyed all that. Now we've been run by a bunch of criminally insane, mentally ill people.
Yes, mind molesters, I call them now. I think it's a description to people. People have heard of child molesters, but we're dealing with mind molesters.
Information, well, that's the sickness of this world has happened through this, and this is back like 11th century. You were talking about when this happened, when they started to do this, and who are into all this sort of occult, and they're bloodthirsty and crazy mind molesters.
they're bark raving mad. I think that's the key thing to understand. These people are the purest sociopaths to ever walk the earth.
That's crazy. Now, with the law, we're talking about history, and you've got so much with oneheaven.org about the law. Now, we're going back when the Catholic Church happened with Charles Martel and his sons. Now, they put in sort of something happened. There was it came to Sacr'e Law or Sacred Law, and this is where it sort of it started off, but then it got molested by these crazy people. Can you explain about this?
Yeah, exactly. Look. You'll go to court. People go to court and you'll hear the words, all rise.
Yep.
Court is now in session. The Honourable blah, 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 presiding. You hear these words and people hear them and say, oh, well, it's just some old custom. You talk to a lawyer and a lawyer says, well, it is what it is. No one will give you an explanation. But if you go and look at sacred law, the origin of sacred law, created, or Sacr'e Loi, created by the Carolingians, Charles Martel's sons, and then taken over by his grandson, a guy called Charlemagne, you'll actually see that a word session or session is actually has meaning. It's not just some word. It doesn't mean that the time has started. The word session took over from the Roman word fundus or fund as the meaning for an estate. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
So people may have heard of this word estate because you hear it when people die. When someone dies, the eldest son, for example, often will become the executor of the estate. Well, the Romans had their own word. They called it fund. And the Pippins, the Carolingians, had a word. They called it session. And so this is a critical word. When you hear that word, what you're hearing is that the court is starting under sacred law. And that's the other reason you hear the word honourable. The concept of honour is an extremely old concept. The concept of honour simply meant this. Everything in the world around you had a price. And instead of people killing one another, you've heard of an eye for an eye or blood revenge.
Yep.
The Carolingians replaced the crazy concept of blood revenge and returned the law back to a thing called honour price, where everything had a price. In other words, if you injured someone, rather than you being killed, which was obviously going to be a waste of a life, you would pay a penalty, and that would be your honour price. So when you go to court, when you hear the judge being called the Honourable, that means that he is presiding over a matter dealing with an honour price. So basically they're telling you that they're operating under sacred law, which was created 1,260 odd years ago.
But now it's all different. I mean, we've got so much laws now, administration law, it's all paper law, and you don't even virtually say anything. And now we're going into technology law, which is just going to be completely. But it's just interesting how the law has just changed, and we've just got so many laws that are going through at this moment and now.
Well, you've just struck on the perversion, because I've just said that the judge is operating under sacred law.
Right.
But you're not actually being judged under sacred law. You're being judged under a thing called Salic law.
Salic. What's Salic law?
Salic comes from the Latin salicus, which means salt. It means sea.
Oh, yeah.
It's the law of the sea.
Oh, admiralty law.
Admiralty law came later, that dreaded thing. Well, in fact, there's 3 layers. Salic law is the base. That's law of the Holy See, law of the Venetians. Then came a thing called maritimio law, maritime, mari, sea, timio, fear of the Holy See. That's the movement of goods on the sea. And then the third is admiralty law, which is law of the conscripts, the sailors on the ship of the sea, the vessels.
Vessels, yeah.
So when you are put in front of a court, you're not actually under sacred law. You're under Salic law, maritime law, admiralty law, and then administrative law, which is the most recent incarnation of that. So you can never be considered honourable. You're automatically in guilt. You're automatically considered guilty, and the best you can do is mitigate the penalty, punishment, and torture they'll put you under.
Now, the bar, right, we've got the judge and then the lawyers with the courtroom, the honourable, and we're screwed when we get in there. We're guilty, totally screwed. So that's why we get a representative, a lawyer who knows the babble or whatever it is that they're going to, the language that they have. When law is an 8-year language that people have to study, legalese or whatever. So, do the lawyers know anything about this?
No.
Do they know?
No, lawyers aren't taught. Lawyers are just taught on procedure now.
Right.
The lawyers aren't taught the law. If you ask a lawyer what is the law, they'd normally get pretty annoyed with you if they're an experienced lawyer, because they get annoyed with you because they don't know. They don't know about canon law. They don't know about sacred law. They don't know the history of the Holy Roman Empire. They will use the occasional Latin phrase, but they wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah, because they say, well, that's just irrelevant now. We're just doing sort of, you know what I mean? That's probably what they would say, I guess. Well,
they're taught that. They're actually taught at school that the founders of their system, the system that actually created the whole bar, are relevant. It's no longer relevant. The only thing that's relevant is procedure, and everything is procedure. So basically, style over substance is what reigns in the court now.
We've got no hope. We have some hope anyway. We're going to come back. We're going to go. Can you just stay there, Frank? We're going to go into a song, and we'll come back and talk more about is there a remedy to get out of this sort of find ourselves not guilty?
Yeah. Thin remedy.
Thin remedy.
Sliver of hope.
All right.
We'll be back in a sec. Here's some Faith No More. Faith No More there. The Gentle Art of Making Enemies from King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime. You're listening to Workers Radio. It's about 18 minutes past 8 o'clock. We've got Franco Collins on the line.
Frank, how you doing there, mate?
Good, mate, good.
Now, we've got Mr. Anderson here as well with us. We were just talking about Sacr'e Loi, and we were finding a small remedy about law and what it is, and it's been going since, well, we just mentioned the 1100s and how it's all changed and everything. There's no use going to court. If it's rigged, what can we do?
Well, okay, I mean, first off, whenever I talk about this, I'm speaking of law, so I'm not giving advice. I always say that. But the thing is look, that you're dealing with a system that is run with a troll-like mind. So they view everything's based on presumption in their system, absolutely everything. So, I mean, there's the presumption that you're dealing with public servants. You're not. You're dealing with people who are private agents who are then using agency policy under administrative law and treating you as an employee. So that's all a presumption. It's got nothing to do with, you don't live in a country, you are property of a corporation, or you are an employee of a corporation, you're one or the other. So there's all these layers of presumption. We don't have time to go through every layer. But if you don't go, then the bridge trolls will treat that that you are running away, you're acting in dishonor, and they'll come after you. So, in a sense, once their meat machine starts, you've got to deal with it. But in fact, you've got to take a few steps even before you get to that stage of having to go to court. You need to start to take control of your life.
Yeah.
And under their system, you are presumed to be, and people are going to laugh at this, but you are actually presumed to be dead in their system. You're not even presumed to be living.
So we're a dead entity.
A dead entity.
Yeah.
No, you are. And I'll tell you why you're presumed.
Why?
When you were born, very quickly, when you were born, under their system, they created a series of trusts in your name for your benefit. Remember, you live in a society, so you think you're supposed to share the fruits of society. They do it for accounting as much as for control. So they create these trusts. These trusts are called Sacr'e Loi, which is a fancy French way of saying for the life of another, for the benefit of life of another. That's what a Sacr'e Loi is. So these Sacr'e Loi trusts are created when you're born. Then by the time you reach a certain age, they call the age of majority, they call out and say, is Franco Collins or Francis O'Collins there? If you're not there, then under the laws that they created over the centuries, they say that you are basically lost or abandoned. And if you're lost or abandoned, then you're presumed dead.
So you've got to claim yourself, do you?
Right. Now, under probate law, under the law of wills, if one is abandoned, then they can treat you as dead, then they can manage lawfully, they can manage your affairs. You see? And so it's all about money. Everything in their court's about money. Even the word court means securities, bonds, and bailments. It doesn't mean law. Go and look at the origin of court from the Latin word courtio, C-A-U-T-I-O. This was chosen in the 13th century. The Romans didn't call it court. Court is a commercial term. The Romans called it basilicum, a place of dealing with law. The Carolingians were speaking of, they didn't call it court, they called it placitum or place. The Holy Roman Empire under Constantine didn't call it court, they called it synedrion. And there were synedrions in every single region. It was the Roman cult that called it for the first time in history court from courtio because it's about the guilds. And the guilds were created from the 12th century. It's been commercial ever since the 12th century. It's about making money, not about dispensing the law.
So if it was like, for instance, Jack Frost, Corporation Jack Frost goes into court under their jurisdiction, so under their money sort of law. So I've got to go in there and negotiate. I guess that is in the business way. But the thing is, they've got the upper hand because they're well, I'm supposed to be dead.
Well, that's exactly right. Look, there's so many layers, but just to keep it real simple to people, the remedy is this. The presumption is if you don't stand up, if you go about your business in fear and timidity, if you refuse to learn, if you have no idea of history, then you are accepting your position, at best a slave, at worst a piece of property of a corporation. It's why on your passport you have the letter P. The letter P means peon or pauper. Your passport actually tells you who you are by their system. You are a slave. Your passport tells you you are a slave. And under the pauper laws, the poor laws that anyone can read back into England, you can see you've lived under a system of slavery from the beginning. And if people are, in their mind, too stupid to wake up, then you accept that you are a slave and they will treat you as such. And that's the only remedy there is. There is no remedy in being a slave. You're under a whole separate law. Remember I said to you, a judge is under sacred law?
Yep.
And you're under Salic law, maritime law, admiralty law, and then administrative law. Basically, you're screwed. The only time you can get on an equal footing with that judge is to go back to the original law of the estate, which is sovereign law, which is sacred law, which is to stand up and say, I am the general executor of my estate. I am not dead. I've returned to take administration. You guys are no longer valid appointed administrators. I am going to administer my estate unless you show me a seal under my estate as a warrant for your authority, then you are what they call a descent tort. In other words, you are